All right, this is an overview of Chapter 1, When Teaching and Learning Leave the Classroom. This chapter talks about the importance of developing an online learning community. And in developing this learning community is very essential to have a successful learning experience in an online setting. And studies have shown that when you create an effective online learning community, you're actually increasing availability and accessibility of information for students. They don't need to just be in the classroom in order to have access to all of this. It's at their fingertips at any given moment, whether they're using a smartphone or a laptop or an iPad. It also allows for engagement with different learning styles. In an online learning community, you have students enrolled from all over the world. And this really does help increase teaching and learning responsibility. So as a student, it is your responsibility to set the pace, to make sure that you make the due dates. And as a teacher, it focuses on your responsibility to be present for the students, even though you're not actually face-to-face with them, and providing them all the necessary tools that they need, plus the clarity and expectations for the course. And for teachers as well, it really helps us, or helps all educators, to rethink and redefine their pedagogy and how they approach education, the learning objectives that they want to get out of it as we're going purely through a technological approach. And of course, the faculty roles and culture that we incorporate within this learning community, and how we assess the work of our students. And it's very important to note that students cannot be passive learners in this. It is very much up to them to get what they want out of it. Now, a couple learning environment necessities. Students must contribute, and so as a teacher, you need to find ways to create discussion boards or synchronous meetups for students to make sure that they are there and contributing to their own learning. In order to do this, you want to have a lot of active learning techniques, like I was saying, collaborations, discussions, reading and responses, doing some role playing or simulations, and there's many more out there. And we're constantly developing new ways to approach this to make this learning environment active and engaging. It's also important to be diligent and deliberate with your instruction as an educator. And you want to build on these networks that allow you to interact with people all over the world that are enrolled in this course. And so you get this collaborative process of knowledge acquisition. So, you're getting multiple different angles and approaches to how we study and research and understand and explain. And it's very, it's very powerful to have this massive network that you can't generally fit into a single classroom or within a single class time. How is success measured within this framework? It's not by the numbers, but by the depth of knowledge and the skills that are required. So think critical thinking. We're not looking at the data, but we're actually looking at what you're actually learning and what you're able to do at the end of each course or each individual module. And of course, by the number of empowered learners that you get out of this. So as we increase responsibility for your own learning, we're also fostering the development of empowered learners, people that are taking charge of their own learning. And so the necessities for forming an online community is through this transformative learning. And so that it basically lists off the things that we need for the community. Obviously, we need the people. We need to have a set purpose. We need to have policies that provide guidance for how we're going to conduct ourselves within this online community. Of course, we need computer systems. We need the technology. I need to incorporate the collaborative learning to build on those networks and create engagement among the students. And of course, reflective practices, giving students the opportunity to, look at themselves and see like where they're at and how they can improve upon themselves. Think like self-assessments, empowered learning. We want them to take charge of their own education. And of course, with any given approach to education, there is always issues and concerns. And despite the progression of technology, an online learning community is no different. And some of the issues and concerns include developing an online social presence. Some people are more able to be sociable in face-to-face interactions, while others are better equipped to create this online personality that you want to present yourself professionally. You want to make sure that the setting that you're in within an online community, and make sure you act appropriately. So, for instance, it's not like you're sitting in a bank and you're going to speak quietly. Like, you don't know what the surrounding environment is, so you need to be aware of that in an online community and know how to act within that specific setting. Of course, there's also the physical issues from extended use. You can see I'm wearing blue light glasses. And that's really to protect the strain of looking at a screen for too long. Of course, your posture. I actually even have like a back brace sometimes when I'm really working on my laptop a lot and I need some support to make sure I'm not just craning and crouching over or tweaking my neck. There's also, of course, the internet addiction. If we're constantly attached to technology, when do we remove ourselves from it? Now it's a part of school, so that could be an excuse. And of course, the attachment from reality. We're creating this online presence, but what about who we are in reality? And of course, the face-to-face versus virtual classrooms. There's very unique set of talents for each one. In order to be successful in face-to-face, in order to be successful in virtual classroom, there are very different skill sets that you need. And so even if you're successful in one, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be successful in the other. So it's important to understand what you'll need in order to excel in each one. Now for students online, talking about creating that social presence and being skillful in face-to-face versus in a virtual setting. I like how they said it's the rise of the introverts. A lot of times an online community gives those more introverted person that safe space to come out and express more of their knowledge and put their opinions out there and interact with others. And extroverts could struggle with this, developing that online presence. You're so used to just having that face-to-face and transitioning that to an online community could be difficult for some extroverts. And so some characteristics for online success includes, being open-minded, being able to communicate through writing, being self-motivated and disciplined in your learning, time management, organization. There's so many things that can go towards it, but these are some very essential ones, as was mentioned earlier. And of course, being a noisy learner. It's so easy to be on an online community and just fade into the back, whereas in the classroom, you can get called upon, or a partner can grab you, or the teacher can see that you're struggling, or you're quiet, or you want to say something, and they can bring that out of you. But here, it's really up to you. So you need to be active and creative in your learning. So transitioning and establishing a presence online. And so you can create a presence through threaded discussions, which are really nice because you're allowing people to connect online and, post their opinions and respond to others and provide feedback. It's always good to have a highly interactive instructor with solid course activities, and you want to create this sense of synchronous presence where, you feel like you're all there together, even though you may be in different parts of the world or different parts of the school campus. And posting at different times, you can still feel that presence as you are constantly responding to each other. And the difference of interaction and presence. And so one can interact but still feel detached. And that's a big issue, especially that what we've been dealing with in this last year and a half with virtual learning in the K-12 education. Even though they may log in onto Zoom and they may respond when they're supposed to and they may turn in their assignments on time, it's still difficult to really feel a part of a classroom when you're in this online distance learning community. And social connection, is this greater than oriented goals? This is a big question that, a lot of people, I believe, would be studying this right now. Is it more important to be in a classroom with your peers, learning as a group and having that physical presence, or is it the content-oriented goals that are most important? So do we need to remove these physical inhibitions, and would that increase emotional connections? And knowledge is primarily generated by relationships and interactions, and we're seeing that a lot as we are realizing that we need to include more group discussions or group projects, or increasing this group discussions and group projects. Can't think of the other one I was trying to think of. But it's that idea of working together and being able to communicate and, bouncing ideas off of each other to develop each other's knowledge. And then from there, you can build these relationships from those interactions. And of course, social presence is critical for community development. So being able to communicate and work with others and listen and be able to take feedback and build upon that, this is a very positive thing that we can develop in our students as they go beyond the K-12 classroom and go into society as a participating member within their communities. And even when they're in school, even when they're in their high school, they can still become involved within the community. Their community is a large part of them. So another issue this chapter brought up was, of course, the technological gap between the younger generations versus the older generations. Like for me, I grew up and I got to see the development of technology, from dial-up to wireless, and from landlines to beepers to cell phones to smartphones. We got to see this like rapid progression. But of course, a lot of the older generations, they were already set with a certain standard that they were given and grew up with. And so, being able to bridge that gap, and even for us now that are educators now, as we grow older, we're going to start getting distended from what is becoming, the newest, fastest, smartest thing that's being thrown out technological wise. And so it's important to be able to, maintain that understanding. And so realizing that there could be differences in technological savviness, and that's fine as an educator. You can accept that. And in fact, you can use that as a valuable learning lesson, give your students that leadership role to take part in some troubleshooting within the classroom or within the virtual class. And internet use, of course, during the differences between how students use internet during school versus for school, the online research versus, going into libraries and actually finding books and reading the books. This is like a very new shift that we're getting. Technology, it's not about memorizing knowledge because it's at your fingertips, but it's how you use that knowledge and apply it. And the learning environments to foster personal meaning creation. And so again, we come back to empowering our learners. We need to create a learning environment that challenges our students to go beyond the curriculum even, and, develop their own questions that they want to explore. And, it's pulling those scaffolds off. You want to avoid too much instructor intervention. You want to let your students know that it's okay to struggle. You're there to guide them, but you also want to let them have that challenge, let them have that struggle in order to grow. And like I said earlier, let the learners take the lead. That's a very valuable lesson for them within a safe environment, because you're there to provide guidance for them as an instructor, and you can let them, attempt, or you can let them fail and build upon that failure to grow towards that success that they're looking for. And it's constructivist teaching. So students are active in their knowledge and meaning construction, and students are not just passively receiving information. So I see a lot of cool examples where students are actually part of creating their curriculum and creating the assignments and projects that they work on, giving them these options and choices and letting them be creative and express their knowledge in their own unique ways. And so I copied this quote. I really liked it. It says, when teaching and learning leave the classroom, it is up to the instructor to create an effective container within which the course proceeds by posting goals, objectives, and expected outcomes for the course, initial guidelines for participation, thoughts, and questions to kick off discussion, assignments to be completed collaboratively. And then once you do that as an instructor, you want to be able to take a back seat. So it's all about, being very explicit with your expectations and how the class is to be ran. And when you do that, you give your students an ability to rise up into a more empowered learning, taking charge, a leadership role. And so you provide guidance still. You take a seat back, but you're still there to provide guidance by, monitoring your students' learning, prodding them in the right direction, or prodding them towards, the more in-depth questions. And of course, refocusing them when they get distracted or when they go off topic for a bit. And you want to be able to gradually transfer that power from teacher to students, give them that leadership role. This was like a thing I feel like that was just repeated or was written repeatedly throughout this chapter. And I think it's very important to keep in mind that we need to abandon this traditional approach to education where it's students sit down, stay silent, and the instructor talks for, an hour or 2 hours, and they just write. That's no longer what we want. We want students to actually take charge in their learning and not just receive information. And of course, feedback. Feedback is so essential throughout the whole process of our students' learning. You want to just constantly give them that feedback so that they can understand, how they're growing and where they're going and what they're doing well and how they can improve upon that. And also give students the ability to self-assess themselves and assess their peers. And that, again, allows them to take charge of their learning. Now, some final implications of this is kind of like an overview, a wrap-up of everything that was said. The key characteristics of a learning community are being honest, being responsive, having relevance within the curriculum to the students and their personal experiences, be respectful of each other, being open, and of course, empowerment of our students. And so we need to provide security for our students to freely express themselves. And that equates to having this active and abundant discussion, this learning environment where they can throw their opinions out there,